Canon's really been surprising us a lot lately, but could there actually be a hidden dual native ISO in the Canon R5? Let's go take a look. Canon recently launched the Canon R5C to a fair amount of acclaim, and there was some controversy, I think, as just to be expected with any camera launch today. I think that's just kind of par for the course in the world that we live in. But there was one spec of the Canon R5C that really caught my attention as a Canon R5 owner, and that was this. The Canon R5C says it has dual native ISO built into the camera. Now, I'm going to put the specs up here so you can see those dual native ISOs that are on the R5C. But what really surprised me about this is the Canon R5C has the same sensor and digit processor as the Canon R5. So how could that camera have access to a dual native ISO and not the R5? So one thing that I found interesting was the R5C lets you set your base ISO, whereas the R5 does not. But I wondered, does the R5 have a hidden dual ISO just like the Sony a7S III? And if you remember when the Sony a7S III launched, Sony did not have a quote-unquote true dual native ISO on there. But if you take a Sony a7S III, if you've ever used one, when you flick over to 12,800 on the Sony a7S III, the noise drastically drops off and you get a very, very different look in the camera. And I started wondering, has Canon done the exact same thing with the Canon R5? Is there a hidden second base ISO in the Canon R5? Let's go on the computer, take a look at this because I think this is very, very important, and I personally think you're going to be blown away when you look at this if you are a Canon R5 user. So let's go ahead, jump in the computer, and take a look. Okay, so we are here in front of the computer. Now, what I did is I did do some black cap records on my Canon R5. Basically, took all the light out of there just to look purely at the grain of the camera. Now, if you remember in the Canon R5C, the dual ISO is actually 800 and 3200. So if we have something like that on the Canon R5, we should see a ISO decrease when we go from 2500 to 3200. So what I have is I got the test here, and just to really show it off, I'm going to basically come up here and start playing this at a 400% blow up so we can really look at the grains. I'm going to play it here. And as you can see, we have 2500. We have the grain you would expect. Let's see if there's a switch when you go to 3200. And boom, right away you see it instantly clean up with a really, in my opinion, pretty dramatic result right there when we go to 3200. Now what I want to do is I really wanted to look at the grain structure. So I went in Lumetri and actually increased my exposure by 5 stops just so we could look at the grain. So let's go and look at this at a 5-stop overexposed. So here we are, 5 stops overexposed, really highlighting the grain of 2500 ISO. And look once again when we switch to 3200 ISO. Bam, that is a absolute gigantic difference between the two ISOs. And I was really, really impressed by that. It's telling me there is something going on here in the Canon R5 when you jump to 3200, just as it's advertised in the Canon R5C. Now, what I really found interesting too, and I'm just going to keep my 5-stop overexposed things here just to really highlight the grain, even though this is obviously an extreme way of showing this. But for me, I'm using this for demonstration purposes, so take that as a grain of salt. What I want to do now is to show you the difference using the same technique, but look here at the grain structure at 800 ISO compared to 3200. We got 800, look at the noise. Go to 3200 and it's almost identical. That is a huge, huge thing. That tells me the fact that the noise grain is so similar at 800 to 3200 ISO that we are looking at a dual native ISO type feature hidden inside the Canon R5. Now for you as a shooter, this actually has a very practical application too, because while we can't set the dual native ISO like we can on the R5C, you can still use this for your advantage, and it just gives you some knowledge that you need to know. So for instance, because we know we have this information, I wanted to do a test to see how 1600 ISO compares to 6400. So here's the noise grain from a 1600 ISO, 5 stops overexposed, compared to 64. And unbelievably, if you look at that, I'm going to go back here. The noise from a 1600, the noise floor is actually a little bit higher than its 6400 ISO. That is absolutely incredible. Let's go look at the noise structure here at 2500 versus 12,800. That is another impressive thing. You can just see, for whatever reason, the noise structure of the Canon R5 is treating the noise above 3200 ISO. The camera is processing it different. There's obviously some kind of noise filter on there that's making it on there. I was personally shocked to look at this and see that I get more noise artifacts at 2500 ISO than I do at 12,800. This blew me away, and I think it's something you want to know if you're out there shooting. And now these are black cap tests that to basically really show you the grain and show you the difference, that I bumped up 5 stops. But you know, real world tests are important. So what I did is I just took a very basic scene here on my desk, and I have 2 versions of it. I shot it in C-Log 3. These tests are all done in C-Log 3. And one thing I'm going to do is, you can see here, this is a 2500 ISO, and boom, 3200, you can see an immediate improvement in the grain structure there at 3200. And I wanted to see what would happen when I put a LUT on this. So here you go. Here is the same scene with a LUT at 2500. And I just took the basic Canon LUT, and then what happens is, look at it when it goes to 32. Instant improvement in clarity. Really, really impressive. I'm going to jump in here to 400% now. And now you can see at 400%, I'm basically punching in here to the sunglasses there, because that is all dark area. Look at this, 2500, 32, boom. It's instantly cleaner. It's undeniable there's a difference here. I'm going to go back and show that one more time. 2500, 3200. So boom, there you go. The proof is in the pudding. Both with cap pictures and with an actual video image, you can see a drastic difference in how the Canon R5 handles higher ISOs from 3200 on. This is really, really exciting in what it means, and in my opinion, changes how we go and shoot the Canon R5. Okay, so that is pretty amazing. And really, you gotta ask yourself why this matters if you're a Canon R5 shooter. And while you can't set the base ISO on the R5 like you can on the R5C, and I don't think we'll ever be able to do that. I think that's one of the things that Canon will help differentiate the R5C. This is still an incredible, in my opinion, a game changer in how I approach shooting on the Canon R5. The obvious difference in noise reduction at 3200 completely changes the way that I will be approaching low light shooting when using this camera. And I am so excited to see that it's there. And it's so nice knowing that that latitude is there, that I can push the camera that much more. And the Canon R5 is never going to replace the Sony a7S III as far as a low light beast. But that being said, I have never really found myself needing anything past 12,800, and honestly, 3,200 and 6,400 are usually about as far as I'll ever push a camera anyway, all the time. So it is so awesome to know that that is there in the camera. Now, why couldn't Canon talk about this? I'm not sure. Canon won't tell me, but I think it has something to do with the way that the camera processes noise. I think there is an algorithm that at 3,200 ISO and above, that it switches over a different noise reduction. So they don't want to call it a true dual native ISO. But as you can see from the test, the differences are striking. And from all practical purposes for us as shooters, this is an actual, in my opinion, a hidden dual native ISO in the Canon R5. So just one more little hidden perk of the Canon R5 that continues to keep me excited to shoot with this incredible piece of technology every day. Anyway, guys, I hope that was helpful. I hope you are excited by this. Go out there, test it out on your Canon R5s. I'd like to hear what you have to say about this. Yeah, guys, go ahead and leave me any comments if you have anything down below. I'd love to hear from you. Yeah, go out there, keep on shooting, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon.